Welcome to First. I'm Nichelle Poston along with Shirley Min and Mark Eichman. The final push is on to sign up for the Affordable Health Care Act. Are enough Delawareans going to do it? The first to register says she has no regrets.
Governor Jack Markell is pushing for better roads and clean water. He makes his case about why we need to pay for it this week on First.
And First Experience offers hope to AIDS victims in Africa through the work of a Delaware artist. First, your public media news magazine starts now.
The March 31st deadline for enrolling in Obamacare is fast approaching, and millions of Americans are either still uninsured or weighing their options, trying to figure out whether it's best to enroll or not. In this week's First Look, according to local officials, you don't want to miss the opportunity for affordable health care. Also, the first person who signed up in the state says she has no regrets and she got to keep her doctor.
I'm willing to do most anything to try to promote what's going on because I think it's a positive for the United States. I think it's something that we all need badly.
This Selbyville boarding kennel, run by 59-year-old Janice Baker, could have closed down, she says, due to increasing insurance rates she and her husband simply could not afford and were forced to pay for health care. They're self-employed and have seen rates skyrocket over the years.
I understand prices have gone up, costs have gone up, but there was no way that we could raise our rates here to keep in sync with what they were charging us.
When the couple started this kennel, they were paying $6,000 a year for health care. And here's a glimpse of how prices started to climb. In 2009, that's when the rate started to rise for the Bakers, who were paying $10,000 at that time for health insurance. By 2010, their insurance went up to $12,900. In 2011, rates increased to $13,003, and it kept going from there. In fact, by 2012, the couple paid $16,006. Finally, in 2013, prices went up to $20,000. That's when the couple was forced to purchase insurance individually.
When my husband went looking on his own for insurance, I went looking on my own, and I was turned down 3 times in a row by different companies. I got desperate, and then I really started looking into the Health Care Act.
Fortunately for Janice, Obama's affordable health care plan is what saved her and the business. Challenging at first to sign up, a determined Janice pressed forward, becoming the first in the state to enroll.
It's half the price to start off with. My deductible on my other policy, as I said, was $6,000 and $5,000 out of pocket. This is $1,800. So I'm just, I'm just so thrilled to have it.
According to Janice, the preventive care is amazing. Further north of Selbyville, officials at St. Francis Hospital in Wilmington support preventive care and say that's very important to keeping people healthy and insurance rates low. On average, the hospital sees about 20% of the uninsured come through the emergency room yearly.
In our ER, we do on an average in a year maybe over 30,000 visits a year. So if you do 20% of that, you're at 5,000 or 6,000 people that you're touching.
Inside St. Francis, there's a small setup where people are encouraged to go to sign up. Though traffic has been steady, one challenge remains: convincing people affordable health care will work.
I think it will work. I think there's a lot riding on it in terms of changing, in terms of how people seek their care.
This is very disruptive for health care, for the country, and I think eventually, so was Medicare when it started, so was Medicaid. So this is the next step in the process in terms of trying to create a healthy population in the United States.
While the goal is to reach out to all ages, hospital officials tell me the pre-Medicaid population, 55 to 65 years of age, and mostly women, are signing up.
As a healthcare provider, as someone who's been in healthcare for many, many years, for me it's extremely exciting, and particularly in a community like this, it is life-changing for people.
Back in Sussex County, Janice enrollment earned her a trip to meet the president and a few other positive benefits as well.
I got to keep my doctor, I got to keep my laboratory, I got to keep, any of places I go for, x-rays, scans, things like that. I've been able to keep everything. Nothing changed.
Now she's encouraging others to log on to their computers before it's too late.
I just advise anybody to, even if you don't want to think that you want to look into it, get on your computer, call somebody.
About 10% of Delaware's population are uninsured residents. As of February 28th, 7,000 residents have signed up for the Affordable Health Care Act, but that number doesn't mean the enrollees were all uninsured.
So, Michelle, the deadline rapidly approaching here at the end of the month. Who is exempt from this, and what are the penalties from not enrolling?
Well, Mark, it's really complicated when you think of those who are exempt. There has to be some sort of hardship, such as being homeless. As far as penalties, it's a $95 per person per month penalty this year, or 1% of your yearly income. In 2015, the penalty will increase. $325 per person per month penalty, or 2% of your income, and even more in 2016. We're talking nearly $700 per person per month penalty. But for children, thankfully, the penalties are much smaller. And I also like to add, for those who like to plan ahead, the enrollment for 2015 begins this November.
All right, Michelle, thanks so much. And you can follow our reporting on the deadline when you visit the pages of newsworks.org/Delaware.
Coming up on First, Art as Therapy. We'll show you how it benefits those who receive and those who give it as well. First Experience looks at hope for those afflicted with AIDS in Africa. It comes in a bag of hope made at an art studio in Milford.
Delaware Governor Jack Markell is our first person this week. Thanks so much for taking the time to be with us, Governor.
My pleasure.
We know you have a lot on your plate right now, putting together a budget being one of them.
And earlier this week, DFAC lowering estimates for state revenue. Does that really throw a wrench in the works? How does that affect the budget process?
It's always a challenge when there's less. We've been through this a number of times. The irony this time is that the economy is actually doing a little bit better. We created over 8,000 jobs last year, outperformed the country according to the Department of Labor. But some of our revenue line items are not really that sensitive to the economy. So there was a big refund to a corporate income tax player. There was a reduction in the estate tax. Of course, the gaming revenues continue to be challenged, so some issues like that.
In your budget proposal, it seems like it all hinges on your plan to move money from the general fund to the Transportation Trust Fund, replace that money with a 10-cent increase in the gas tax. Was making the budget sort of hinge on that, sort of a way to kind of force lawmakers to get it passed if they wanted the budget to be approved?
Well, if they want any kind of reasonable capital program for our roads and bridges, we're going to have to bring additional revenue in, and that's been clear for a long time. The challenge is that there's no industry that can be successful if you have expenses that grow with inflation, but you have revenues that don't. And that's really been the problem. And so the Transportation Fund, it's funded by the gas tax, document fees, and tolls. And the gas tax hasn't increased since 1995, and $1 in 1995 is worth 65 cents today. So we're just going to have to figure out some way to invest in our roads and bridges, because the bottom line is that Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia are all making big investments in their transportation systems. And if we want to keep up and be competitive, we need to as well.
So is your gas tax proposal a rebuilding of our infrastructure plan, or do you see it as a jobs plan?
It's a great question, and it's both. I mean, there's no question that businesses want to be located in places where there's strong infrastructure, but it also creates thousands of jobs. The Federal Highway Administration estimates that for every $1 billion, you create 13,000 jobs when it comes to roads. So I'm proposing an additional $500 million. So it's thousands of jobs. It's great for jobs, but just as importantly, it's important for jobs in the future. We have to invest in our transportation system for the purposes of public safety, for the purposes of reducing congestion, and for economic development. And so all of those three things fit together.
I mean, but a gas tax isn't exactly popular. So is there a contingency plan in place should it not be passed?
Well, no. I mean, this is not a popularity contest. And nothing would make me happier than if the gas tax or other funding mechanisms had come into place over the last 20 years, but they haven't. So when you have an issue, you know, my job, and the reason people elect us is to say, okay, how's the world changing? What does that mean for Delaware? What are the challenges we face, and what are we going to do about it? So I'd be perfectly happy, believe me, as an elected official. None of us likes to go to the public and say, well, we think you ought to pay more for this or that. But the bottom line is we need to make sure we have the revenue in order to make our roads and bridges better. So there's not particularly a plan B. I mean, if it doesn't happen, then we're going to have a very small capital program.
So in a year where a good chunk of the General Assembly is up for re-election in the fall, is your ability to convince what are majority Democrat majorities in both chambers that this is worth doing and needs to be done? Is that sort of a test of your leadership ability? Do you see it that way?
Well, I mean, I think it's always a challenge, and I think these are any time that you ask people to pay more for anything, it's a challenge. I understand that, and I think you know, and a governor can't do this alone. I mean, I am very active these days. I'm making the presentation all over the state. To many different groups, explaining it, and the response from the public is, and I say to the public that my hope is that when I leave, you say, well, I sort of wish he didn't tell me that, but now that I understand the facts, this proposal makes as much sense as anything else, and I'm getting a lot of that. You know, whether or not a majority or the necessary number of people in the General Assembly vote for it in the end, I don't know. We'll have to see, but I'm going to continue to make the pitch, because whether it's the investment in roads or whether it's cleaning up our water or dealing with all the flooding issues, again, these are problems that exist. We can pretend they don't exist, and we could do nothing. I mean, at some point, somewhere, something's going to happen.
You transitioned us into clean water. Let's talk a little bit about that. Why has it taken this long for anything to really even be proposed? It hasn't, of course, been passed yet, but why is it taken this long and the state of Delaware's water been allowed to get so bad for so long? So
first of all, again, nothing would make me happier than if it had been cleaned up over the years. And there has been some progress. The Clean Water Act, for example, did help. But as I said in my State of the State, I think it's embarrassing and unacceptable that the huge majority of our waterways are not fishable or swimmable. And what that specifically means is that the legal limit for many of our waterways in terms of how many fish you can eat in a year is 1 or maybe 2. I'm not talking about in a week or a month. I'm talking about in a year. And so, again, we know how to fix it. I think it's always good if we had fixed these kinds of things earlier. I think to some extent we now have some technologies that didn't exist before. For example, in Mirror Lake and Dover, all kinds of PCBs. It would take about 40 years normally to clean that up. But because of a new technology that we're just deploying now, where we inject carbon pellets and the PCBs and bind to the carbon pellets, it's going to be cleaned up in about three years instead.
There are some who are closely watching this proposal, like the folks who live near the Vlasic pickle plant in Millsboro. That's sort of in the process of transitioning into a chicken processing plant. They're watching what you say about cleaning the Delaware's water and wondering if going forward there will be more of a focus on preventing future dirtying of Delaware's water when it comes to things like the pickle plant and the Indian River.
Well, if you take the pickle plant and the chicken plant that Harem that's offered to purchase it, they're going to be spending a very significant amount of money to clean up the water. And so, they know about the issues, and this is not an art, this is a science. They know what they have to do, and they've made a commitment that they're going to clean it up. We need a strong economy, and we need a good environment. These things are not inconsistent. And in fact, if anything, I think they very much go together.
Well, are existing corporations that some blame for a lot of the pollution and toxicity that's in the waters, how are they going to be held accountable? The
proposal is, in terms of how we fund the cleanup, is a bit less than $1 a week for most houses, about $45 a year. For big industrial users, it would go up, that would be capped at $25,000. But it's not quite as, it would be nice and simple if you said, okay, well, just go after all the, the big, industries that are really polluting our water now. That's just not how it works. The fact is, all of us are contributing in one form or another.
Let's go to a little bit of a rapid fire section here and get some updates from you on things we've had you in to talk about before, just to kind of get the status of them. Short answers here. On Fisker, there's been some movement in that. What's the state of them?
I think there's still uncertainty. I mean, I think we know a little bit more than we did before, because we know the buyer is a company from China, Wansheng, and we've been in touch with them, but they still have some decisions to make. They do seem interested in building cars. Again, they've said that if there's enough demand, the second-generation car, would be something they'd be interested in doing in Delaware. No commitments, and I think still some uncertainty.
How about the steel mill, Claymont, closed down? Any movement on that?
Nothing I can talk about. Discussions. I can't say which way it's going to go. It would be certainly great to get people working there again, but I can't be any more specific today.
And that's a Russian. Evraz is a Russian. Does that have any geopolitical?
I don't think so.
Any global impact?
They decide. I mean, unfortunately, they were losing a lot of money at that plant. The kind of steel that they were making at that plant. It's really a commodity these days, and they just weren't making any money. In fact, they were losing money, so they decided to shut it down.
Direct mail's going out now to homeowners saying, let's get this death penalty repeal bill out of committee. Let's get it a full up or down vote in the House. Where do you stand?
I've been following it very closely. I've been talking to a lot of people who have come in to see me on both sides. I'm keeping my counsel at this moment, but I will certainly be following it very closely as it continues. I also have a perspective on the issue, having served on the Board of Pardons for 10 years and having dealt with a number of death penalty cases, and as governor as well. I've had, as you may remember, last year I did commute a death sentence. So I think these are very hard issues.
Okay, well, we are wrapping up, but we have to mention your haircut.
Well, please do.
Reason behind the new look. We like it.
Well, I decided I was sick of pretending that I really had much I have to be careful how I say this, that I had much hair on the top of my head, and I was always doing something crazy, and finally I went to the barber. I said, make it short, and here I am. So it's a whole new me, but I don't have to spend much time brushing it, I can tell you that.
Carla's happy with it?
I took her a little bit to adjust to, but I think she thinks it was probably the smart decision.
All right, well, we are out of time. Thanks, Governor Markell, for sitting down with us, as always. This segment can also be found online at newsworks.org/Delaware.
The model for Art Therapy Express is simple. They provide a place where even the nonverbal can communicate through art. Our video partner, Content Delaware, watched Art Therapy in action. When you see this story, you'll understand the connection between art and therapy.
I started out working on a psychiatric unit using art as diagnosis and treatment for people with emotional disabilities. I just learned the power of art and how people with special needs can really utilize the art. And so I had the courage to break away and create my own nonprofit organization.
What colors are in the ocean? What colors do you think?
So many populations respond to the arts, and so Art Therapy Express, we go into the schools, many different school districts, and students that have trouble verbally expressing themselves are able to, through the arts, say what they want to say.
You want another color?
The students are using any kind of movement that they have. The students have disabilities, but they can use any of their abilities to make art. They can use a lot of different movements with their heads or their feet, using their hands in different ways to make art than a typical student might use. So they definitely get joy out of creating, and I think for a student who doesn't have a way to communicate, that art can be a way that they can express themselves.
Everybody learns differently, everybody works differently, and in the end, everybody can do it. And you just watch them work, the kids work together, and it's just really, it's very special. They are different people for having done this and for having this friendship. I really think they've changed. And I feel like we've changed too, just by having the opportunity. And just acceptance and appreciation of all people.
What's your favorite brush to use? The big brush, the little brush, or the sponge? You want to use the sponge?
You know, nothing like this exists that I know of in even the tri-state area. The schools wanted it, the parents wanted it, and we just answered a need. And I think what you see here is the joy that happens when you bring together students with and without disabilities. And that's really the turn of the program, is how much people with disabilities can teach us. It's more than just art, it's about life and quality of life.
There are volunteer opportunities for high school and college students. Go to artexpress.org to learn more. If you want to see more Delaware videos like that one, visit contentdelaware.org.
In our last segment, we heard Governor Markell talk up the need for clean water and improved roads. It's not the first time fees have been added as an investment in the state's future. Bloom Energy is one such other investment, and that also includes a fee for Delmarva Power customers. And that's where we bring in Rob Tourneau with his editorial cartoon for this week. Rob, thanks for being here.
That's right.
So what's your take on this, the Bloom Energy, what do you call it, boondoggle?
Yeah, you know, I think it's sort of this out-of-control monster that people are beginning to realize. We were told one thing, that it was going to be a minor charge, less than $1, but now it's ballooning upwards of $6 and could incrementally increase more as people's electricity use goes down. I brought my Delmarva Power bill. I'm a Delmarva customer, and you know, one of the things that strikes me is they don't call it a Bloom Energy charge. You know, they call it a transmission capacity charge, and it sort of hides the fact that people are supporting this company that is creating green energy and maybe bringing jobs, but still, you know, you'd like to know as a customer where your money's going.
And I think people support the idea behind clean energy, that, you know, a cleaner place is a better place, but maybe not so much in a kind of hidden way.
Right. I mean, you know, we want more people to drive electric cars. Are we going to have people pay surcharge for Fisker? Obviously not. So, I mean, I think there might be better ways to attract jobs. Obviously, you know, with Fisker kind of falling the way it did, it kind of inhibits the government's role to create incentive for companies to come. So you have to do stuff like this, but this seems to be pretty egregious, especially because of the ballooning costs.
I'm sure we'll talk more about Bloom in the future. Yeah. Let's change topics just for a second. Spring on the horizon, opening day, just a couple weeks away for the Phillies.
Yeah, let's hope spring is here. Yeah, I mean, the Phillies have had a kind of rocksish offseason with all these problems that they're having with their pitching and stuff. So let's hope hopefully it doesn't happen that way and we get a good team to see at least.
Let's cross our fingers. He is Rob Tourneau. You can direct all correspondence to him. You can follow him on Twitter at Rob Tourneau. Read him on newsworks.org/Delaware.
If you're watching First on WITN Channel 22, welcome. First can now be seen on the Wilmington City channel on your Comcast cable system. We'll be here every week, and if you want to watch First again online, go to WHYY.org/First. Watch past shows there when you want.
First Experience this week looks at the continuing struggle against AIDS on the African continent. A Milford artist wants to create an awareness in the ongoing struggle from her art studio. And Jenkins creates Bags of Hope. The impact can be felt in Delaware and in a small village that is half a world away.
My name is Anne Jenkins. I'm born and raised in South Africa, and I've lived all around the world. I've been doing art all my life. I'm self-taught in that, you know, when you're a child, you obviously do some lessons in school, so that's about the extent of my training. I would just experiment. I'm not very good at taking instruction, so I probably wouldn't have done well at art school anyway. My main inspiration is women. I'm not anti-men or anything, but I think that women are very, very courageous, and they show a great deal of dignity in some very harsh conditions, which I've seen all around the world. The Bag of Hope project is, it started about 5 years ago when a group of women in KwaZulu-Natal, which is where my home town is, approached my sister and said they had no skills and they needed to make some money. They didn't want to ask for money, they wanted to earn it. And could she help them? She's a teacher and a quilter, and she said she would teach them to sew. And they started making little landscapes, and they sent a few to us, and my husband and I sat and thought about it, but we must be able to do something, we can help them. And they started making very, very simple landscapes, and after a lot of thinking we decided to put them on the bags. So we started putting them onto that and selling them as the Bags of Hope. We take the money off for the bags, but we send all the money back to them. I decided to incorporate the fabric landscapes into my art. I wanted it to be two stories. The fabric landscape has its own story, and then my painting would have a story, but they would be interrelated. Well, the AIDS situation is, unfortunately, in South Africa is probably the worst in the world. I think KwaZulu-Natal has the highest rate of AIDS numbers, statistics. There's a lot of the older people, grandparents, or of that age, who are bringing up the small children because that middle layer of adults has disappeared, died off. I grew up with the Zulus. I was born and raised there, and I say, well, you know, they helped me when I was a child, look out for me, so I guess it's my turn to help them. And I'm really glad that I can use my art to do so. It's so much better than just sitting down and writing a check. The rand dollar exchange rate is quite, at the moment it's 10-1. So if you send out $1,000, they get $5,000. To them it's equivalent to getting like $50,000. You can do a lot with that. It really can mean a huge difference in their life. They started a soup kitchen to feed the children, because there's a lot of households where there's just children living there, there's no adults around. To keep the soup kitchen going as well, they've started a little permaculture garden, so they're growing their own vegetables. Vukasakla is a Zulu word that means stand up and do it for yourself, and that's pretty much been their theme from the beginning. They got up and did it themselves. My soul really is based in Africa and in South Africa. And being able to weave the two worlds together, I think I find it very interesting, because then I'm honouring my background as well, and being able to help people, which is really fun. I'm such a tiny cog in the wheel, really. I mean, the ladies out there are the ones who are really doing all the hard work. I'm not even a big fish. I'm just a small one trying to do something. It's important.
You can read more about this story on our website, newsworks.org/Delaware. You'll also find a link to Anne's website where you can get more information and even purchase a Bag of Hope. The bags are also available at the Biggs Museum gift shop. We wish Anne and her project much luck.
Next week on First, more on the impact of cleaning up Delaware's waters. Can the balance be maintained between clean water and new business? Plus a story of a fading memory, but a strong hold on the ability to play music. We'll show you what we mean on the next First.
That is First for this week on WHYY-TV and WITN Channel 22. We thank you for watching. For Mark Eichman and Shirley Min, I'm Nichelle Polston. Have a great week.